The sky over Ouagadougou cracked with gunfire just before dawn. It wasn't training drills this time. These were real bullets, real soldiers, and a real attempt to bring down Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Inside the dimly lit presidential compound, alarms blared. Soldiers loyal to Traoré scrambled into position, blocking the main gates while others shielded the residence itself. Outside, a rogue unit of former commandos, faces covered, weapons drawn, attempted to breach the perimeter. Their orders were chillingly clear: seize the captain, dead or alive. But what they didn't count on was the people's resistance. As word spread, hundreds of Burkinabe civilians surged through the capital's narrow streets, some barefoot, others in pajamas, heading straight toward the presidential palace. Unarmed but determined, they created a human barricade between the coup plotters and their leader. A young boy, no older than 12, climbed onto a military vehicle and waved a makeshift flag made from his school shirt and a broken mop handle. "He is our hope," he shouted. "Touch him and you'll have to go through us." The rogue soldiers hesitated. That second of doubt, fueled not by fear of bullets but fear of the people, was all Traoré's guards needed. Shots rang out. Bodies fell. Smoke filled the air. By sunrise, the coup had failed. Again. But this wasn't just another failed power grab. This time, the threat didn't come from within Burkina Faso alone. It followed a shocking accusation from the United States that sent ripples across continents and shook the very foundation of trust between African nations and the West. And it all started with a speech in Washington, D.C. Just days earlier, far away from the chaos of Ouagadougou, General Michael Langley, the head of USAfrica Command, sat stiffly before the U.S. Senate Armed Services Committee. Cameras rolled, journalists scribbled notes, and senators leaned in. "Chairman," Langley said with sharp precision, "we're seeing signs that gold reserves in Burkina Faso are being rerouted for personal protection, not for the benefit of the people. The regime is using wealth to consolidate power and shield itself, possibly even forming alliances with entities outside the traditional democratic fold." It was subtle, but potent. A diplomatic bullet dressed in bureaucratic language. Within hours, media outlets in the West picked up the soundbite. "Is Traoré using Burkina Faso's gold to build his own army?" One headline read. "Burkina Faso sliding toward dictatorship?" Another asked. In Africa, however, the reaction was different. Fierce, emotional, and unfiltered. "We've seen this movie before," said one elder in Bobo Dioulasso. "First they praise you for development, then they smear you, then they bomb you." It brought back memories. Libya. Gaddafi. 2011. And the timing? Almost too perfect. Because right as Langley's statement echoed across newsrooms, Burkina Faso's military announced they had foiled a major plot to overthrow Traoré. The attackers, according to the security minister, weren't just rogue soldiers. They were connected to terrorist leaders, backed by former operatives, and linked to foreign embassies. The plot was clear: storm the palace, eliminate Traoré, destabilize the country, and place it under international control. Coincidence? Or coordination? Inside a small radio station near the Ghanaian border, a journalist named Issa flipped off the mic after reporting the news. He leaned back and whispered to his producer, "This isn't just about gold. This is a war for Africa's soul." But what made the United States suddenly come for Traoré? Why now? And why was the story about gold the trigger? That's when the people remembered what Traoré had done over the past year, and why he had become a threat not just to terrorists or corrupt elites, but to the world order. The captain had done the unthinkable. He kicked out the French military presence from Burkina Faso, once and for all. He closed the chapter on Operation Barkhane and told the world, Burkina Faso will defend itself. He signed a groundbreaking alliance with Mali and Niger, forming the Alliance of Sahel States, a confederation with a clear message: African problems, African solutions. He nationalized two of the country's most lucrative gold mines, slashing the foreign acquisition price from $300 million to just $80 million, saving Burkina Faso $220 million in the process. Instead of padding foreign corporate pockets, that money was redirected to the people. He commissioned the country's first-ever gold refinery, an act that, while technical, symbolized something much bigger: independence. He invested heavily in agriculture, providing thousands of tractors, motorcycles, motor pumps, fertilizer, and fish feed to local farmers. He launched cotton processing centers, understanding that value addition was the key to breaking Africa's dependence on raw exports. He even removed French as the official language, elevating local dialects, a cultural revolution in itself. Hospitals, clinics, mobile health centers, solar-powered refrigerators. The list went on. But the most dangerous thing Traoré had done? He gave the people something no foreign government could tolerate in an unstable region: hope. They loved him, not because he was perfect, but because he was theirs. And in a continent where leaders often feel like imports, that made him dangerous. As the accusations from Washington grew louder and the coup attempts more frequent, a question began to buzz across radio waves, social media threads, and late-night cafe tables. Is the US really after corruption, or are they after control? But if the West thought Traoré would fall like Gaddafi, they were in for a surprise. Because unlike 2011, the people had learned. And this time, they were ready to fight back. Want to know what really happened the night of the coup attempt, and who was behind it? Let's keep going. The palace gates had barely stopped rattling when Captain Ibrahim Traoré stepped outside, dressed not in military regalia, but a plain brown tunic and sandals, unshaken, unbowed. Dust still floated in the morning air as smoke curled from a burnt-out vehicle nearby. The failed coup had left its scars, but it hadn't broken him. If anything, it made him sharper. Inside a secure bunker below the palace, a crisis meeting was already underway. Intelligence officers laid out intercepted communications, recordings, text logs, encrypted notes from burner phones. One word appeared over and over again: chaos. It wasn't just a coup. It was a calculated attempt to plunge the country into confusion, fracture the military, and trigger international intervention. And there, buried in one of the messages, was a chilling detail. April 16th. Presidential Palace. Coup initiated. Foreign green light approved. Green light? Approved by whom? Security Minister Mohammed Husseini pointed to a screen showing a map of Ouagadougou. The commandos came from the eastern corridor, he said, but the planning didn't start here. It began in Abidjan. The room fell silent. The Ivory Coast? An ECOWAS member and a long-time Western ally? Not the government directly, Husseini clarified, but rogue intelligence operatives operating out of diplomatic housing. Worse still, several arrested plotters had previously served in French-aligned units, and at least 2 had spent time in US-sponsored counterterrorism programs. It was clear now, this wasn't just a local operation. It was a geopolitical chess move, and Traoré was the piece they were trying to knock off the board. Outside, crowds were gathering again. Not in protest, but in unity. Elderly women carried pots of food to soldiers. School kids waved hand-drawn posters that read, "Touch Traoré, touch all of us." Across the region, videos poured in from Senegal, Nigeria, Ghana, and Cameroon. Young Africans posted their support, dancing, chanting, draped in Burkinabe flags. And then, from Mali's capital, a voice rang out. Assimi Goïta, leader of Mali's transitional government and close ally of Traoré, took to national TV and said, "Any harm that comes to Captain Traoré is harm to the entire Sahel. We stand ready." But back in Washington, the narrative was shifting fast. General Langley had stirred a hornet's nest. And now he faced backlash from unexpected corners. US-based African diaspora groups began organizing protests. A group of African-American veterans, many with deep ties to Africa, called for a formal investigation into AFRICOM's activities. A letter signed by 12 US Congress members demanded clarity. Was the US government complicit in destabilizing a democratically popular African leader? Suddenly, Traoré was no longer just a local leader. He was a symbol. The next morning, a recording leaked. It was audio of a private meeting held just days before the failed coup attempt between an unnamed Western diplomat and a former Burkinabe general. Voice 1, he's consolidating too fast. Too much power, too soon. Voice 2, the people love him. Removing him won't be easy. Voice 1, then make it look like an internal collapse. You know what to do. The recording went viral in minutes. That same evening, in a bold and unexpected move, Traoré gave a public address, not from a podium, but from the center of a dusty street surrounded by the people. "No foreign power will decide our destiny," he declared. "We were not born to serve, We were born to rise. Burkina Faso is awake, and we will never sleep again." He paused, looked into the camera, and said, "To the powers watching, we know what you tried, and we are ready." The crowd erupted, not in fear, but in defiance. And that's when another twist hit. The French ambassador, who had been recalled earlier in the year, was now being tied to a private intelligence firm that had sent 3 journalists to Ouagadougou days before the coup. They were arrested that night, one with a map of the palace routes, the other with drone footage of key army bases. All 3 had diplomatic tags on their phones. The narrative in Western media began to wobble. Journalists started asking new questions. Was Traoré targeted because of his economic reforms? Is AFRICOM playing a deeper game in West Africa? And for the people of Burkina Faso, one truth rang louder than ever. If they came for Gaddafi when he tried to unite Africa, then they will surely come for Traoré. But this time, the continent was watching. Before we continue, let's pause here for just a second. If you've made it this far, drop a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. Whether you're in Lagos, Atlanta, Johannesburg, Paris, or right there in Ouagadougou, we want to hear from you. Also, take a second to like this video if you believe the people of Africa should choose their own leaders, free from foreign interference. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and share this story with someone who needs to know the truth. Now back to it. As the dust settled, Traoré ordered an internal audit, not of gold, but of loyalty. Who could be trusted? Who had flipped? And how deep did the foreign influence really go? That's when a name surfaced. Someone from inside his own inner circle. Someone he once called brother. What would you have done in Traoré's place? Would you keep trusting? Or burn the system down and rebuild from scratch? Let us know in the comments. His name was Lieutenant Colonel Issouf Diallo. To the public, he was a decorated officer, a war hero who had once led successful missions against jihadist cells in the north. To Traoré, he was more than that. He was family in every way that counted. They had trained together, fought together, shared meals and battlefield secrets. When Traoré rose to power in 2022, Diallo was one of the few men he brought into his tight inner circle. But now, all evidence pointed to him. Surveillance logs showed Diallo had met privately, off-duty, off-record, with at least 2 of the arrested plotters in the weeks leading up to the coup. A decrypted message from a foreign number read, "Confirm Palace Blueprint. D-Day is 16. The number was traced to an IP bounce through Abidjan, then Paris. When Traoré received the final report from intelligence, he sat in silence. His aide, Captain Zongo, watched as the young president gripped the edge of the table. "We've been fighting foreign enemies," Traoré finally said, "but the rot begins within." The betrayal wasn't just tactical, it was personal. And the message behind it was clear: no one was safe. The following day, Burkina Faso's state television interrupted its regular programming with a breaking announcement. Images of Diallo's arrest flashed across the screen. The people watched in disbelief. The same man who had stood beside Traoré during independence parades now sat cuffed, head bowed. The government didn't hide it. Security Minister Husseini made it clear he worked with foreign agents. He gave them maps. He coordinated troop movement gaps. He sold out the country for promises of power. Traoré didn't speak to the public that day, but his absence was louder than any speech. Behind closed doors, he doubled his guard. Meetings became shorter. Protocols tightened. His circle shrank. That night, a mysterious signal jam hit the capital. Cell networks dropped. Internet slowed to a crawl. Some believed it was the government testing emergency blackout procedures. Others whispered of drones, unmarked, silent, hovering over Ouagadougou's airspace. And then came the second twist. Documents retrieved from Diallo's secure tablet revealed an alternate coup plan, one that hadn't been executed yet. Phase 2. Operation Mirage. The plan: if the physical coup failed, destabilize the economy, flood the market with fake currency, sabotage key infrastructure, trigger panic, and make Traoré look like a failed leader. And who was listed as a potential post-Traoré transition advisor? A former finance minister, currently living in Washington, D.C. The dots were connecting faster than ever. Thousands of miles away, in the US, pressure was mounting on AFRICOM. A whistleblower from Langley's own team leaked an internal memo marked "Confidential." It outlined concerns over Traoré's increasing popularity in Pan-African circles and warned of a shift in allegiance among emerging African youth movements. One chilling line stood out. If unaddressed, Traoré's influence could trigger a chain reaction across the Sahel, weakening Western strategic leverage in the region. And just like that, the game was up. This wasn't about gold. This wasn't even about power. It was about precedent. If Traoré succeeded in building an independent, people-first African model, who else might follow? Would Mali nationalize its resources next? Would Senegal question its foreign contracts? Would young Ghanaians push for military autonomy? That's why the accusation had to be made. That's why the coup had to happen. That's why Traoré was painted as a strongman in Washington and a liberator in Ouagadougou. And yet, despite all of it, he was still standing. But then, in the dead of night, another problem emerged. A coded message was intercepted between foreign agents on the border. Plan B is in motion. Convoy en route. Must reach target before Friday prayers. Traoré had less than 48 hours. But who was the target now? It wasn't him. It was his mother, a retired nurse who lived quietly in a small village, far from the capital. They couldn't get the captain. So now, they would try to break him. He called Captain Zongo at 2:16 a.m. Evacuate her. No sirens. No armored vehicles. Do it clean. Zongo obeyed. By sunrise, she was gone. Only the wind remained, whispering through the clay walls of her empty home. Now, a direct message to you, the viewer. What would you have done if you were in Traoré's shoes? Trust no one, or strike before they strike again. Have you ever seen such betrayal from someone you once called brother? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about it. And if this story has you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button so more people can understand what's really happening. The failed coup was just the first bullet. The next shot might not come from a gun. The air inside the war room was thicker than smoke. Traoré stood at the center, arms crossed, eyes locked on a digital map that pulsed with satellite signals, movement trackers, and live reconnaissance feeds. Captain Zongo entered briskly, closing the door behind him. "She's safe," he reported. "We moved her across the Ghanaian border under civilian cover. No trace." Traoré nodded, but didn't speak. Then he turned to the group of senior officers and advisors gathered around him. "It's time," he said quietly. "We've been on defense too long. Now we push back." The table before them flickered to life, screens showing chatter between foreign diplomats, military consultants, and private security contractors, most of them tied to embassies in West Africa. Some of them were untraceable, but not all. One name popped up again and again: Commander Felix Rhodes, a retired U.S. intelligence operative turned defense advisor, based in Abidjan. He was linked to several NGOs operating as humanitarian fronts, but had also made frequent visits to areas near Burkina Faso's gold mining zones. Traoré tapped his name. "This man," he said, "has more power than any official at the embassy. And he's not acting alone." A week later, a convoy of white land cruisers moved slowly across the border into Burkina Faso under the banner of a U.S.-based development foundation. On paper, they were delivering medical supplies. In reality, they were a decoy. 2 nights earlier, Traoré had leaked false intelligence, intentionally, through an intercepted network that he knew was compromised. The bait worked. Inside the second vehicle of the convoy, disguised beneath crates of water filters, sat encrypted communication gear not even the CIA had publicly acknowledged. And among the drivers, 2 foreign agents with forged UN IDs and burner phones linking them directly to Operation Mirage. Traoré didn't stop them at the border. He let them drive. Let them reach the edge of Ouagadougou. And then, in a move that would redefine African leadership in the age of disinformation, he did the unthinkable. He broadcasted their capture live. On national television, radio, and social media, Burkina Faso's government aired the footage. Calm, unedited, and irrefutable. The 2 agents were shown sitting handcuffed, their faces blurred but voices unmistakable. Behind them, crates filled with surveillance drones, data routers, and chemical analysis kits labeled in English and French. A government spokesperson read the statement calmly. These men entered our nation under false humanitarian pretenses. They brought with them tools not for healing, but for destabilization. We will not harm them. We will not torture them. But we will expose them, because Africa is not your playground. Within hours, international media scrambled to verify the footage. The White House issued a vague statement denying any knowledge of the operation, while the U.S. Embassy in Ouagadougou canceled all press engagements. But the people, they didn't wait for confirmation. They knew. And from Dakar to Dar es Salaam, from Atlanta to Addis Ababa, the message was clear. This was not the Africa of old. 3 days later, Traoré made another move. He signed an executive decree barring any foreign military personnel or contract advisors from operating within Burkina Faso without direct authorization from the presidency. All security-related NGOs were suspended pending review. Then he announced a full audit of every single foreign mining operation in the country. Companies that couldn't prove their investment benefits to local communities, contracts revoked, assets frozen, licenses cancelled. All overnight. Western investors screamed. The gold market shook. Shares in mining giants dropped. But in Burkina Faso, markets remained calm. People celebrated in the streets. A vendor in a local market put it simply, for the first time, someone is fighting for us, not selling us. Yet beneath the surface, pressure was mounting. A classified cable leaked to the press showed that AFRICOM had quietly moved resources to Ghana's northern base. Satellite imagery confirmed increased drone activity near Burkina Faso's borders. And then came the most shocking development yet. A confidential letter, penned by a senior advisor to the U.S. National Security Council, was leaked by a whistleblower. In it, one sentence stood out like a gunshot. If we allow Traoré's model to succeed, we risk losing long-term strategic control of the Sahel. His popularity is becoming contagious. That word, contagious, set off alarm bells everywhere. Because it meant they weren't just trying to stop Traoré. They were trying to stop a movement. And yet, the movement had already begun. In Niger, Mali, Chad, Guinea, young soldiers and civilians alike began wearing brown tunics in solidarity. Social media feeds exploded with the hashtag #WeAreAllTraoré. Back in Burkina Faso, the captain held a private meeting with his inner council. Enough of the chess game, he said. It's time to show them we are not pawns. He turned to Zongo. Find the leak in the state ministry. I want names. I want files. And this time, no one gets immunity. But just as he was ready to purge his government and go fully public with everything they had uncovered, a plane landed. An unscheduled diplomatic flight from Geneva. And on board, a well-known international figure with ties to the United Nations. She came bearing an offer Traoré couldn't ignore. But was it a lifeline, or the trap that would end everything? Let us know in the comments. If you were in his position, would you negotiate with the same powers who tried to remove you? Or would you take the risk and go all the way? And don't forget, if you believe this story matters, share it, like it, and subscribe right now. The truth deserves to be heard. The Geneva aircraft touched down quietly in the early hours. No flags, no press, no grand welcome, just a single black SUV waiting on the runway. Captain Ibrahim Traoré watched its descent from a secure command post nearby, his eyes unmoving. He didn't trust it, but he had to hear what they had to say. From the aircraft stepped Madame Elise Marin, a seasoned negotiator from the United Nations Office for African Stability. Behind her calm demeanor was a reputation for back-channel diplomacy. She was known in high circles as the closer, the person who came in when everything else failed. She greeted Traoré with a handshake and a warm smile, but he didn't smile back. "We can speak here," he said. "I want no shadows in this conversation." She nodded. "Very well." Inside the compound, with only Captain Zongo and 2 intelligence chiefs present, Madame Elise laid her cards on the table. "We are not here to dictate, Captain," she began. "But there are growing fears that your leadership style, while nationally popular, is unsettling the geopolitical balance. AFRICOM is nervous. France is furious. Corporations are bleeding. Your name is being whispered in boardrooms more than in war rooms. Traoré said nothing, just listened. She continued, "Here is the offer. Ease your nationalization efforts. Allow a coalition of trusted international auditors to oversee your mining sector. Reinstate limited French security advisors. In return, we will guarantee your government stability, lift sanctions quietly, and open up new lines of trade and aid." Zongo leaned forward. "So you want to control our gold, our security, and our sovereignty again?" Madame Elise kept her tone even. "We want to prevent war, Captain. You've already dodged 5 coup attempts. The next may not fail. And this time, it might not come with soldiers, but with famine, with financial collapse, with chaos." The room went still. Then Traoré spoke. "I appreciate your concern," he said. "But let me ask you something." He turned to face her fully. "When Gaddafi was overthrown, who did you send to negotiate the rebuilding of Libya?" Madame Elise didn't answer. "When Thomas Sankara refused IMF loans, who stood by him?" No answer again. He leaned in. "You do not negotiate peace. You manage control. And I'm done being managed." He stood up. "This country is not for sale. Not to France. Not to AFRICOM. Not to the UN. Burkina Faso will rise on its own terms, or fall fighting for them." Zongo walked Madame Elise out. She didn't speak again. And by nightfall, her plane was gone. The next week, Traoré made a decision that shocked the world. In a live national address, he cut all military ties with AFRICOM. Every operation, every shared intelligence cell, every joint base, cancelled. He also signed into law a sweeping Sovereignty Protection Act, making it illegal for any foreign military force, private contractor, or mining company to operate without full parliamentary transparency and approval. And then he dropped the final hammer. Effective immediately, Burkina Faso would no longer recognize the CFA franc, the French-backed currency used by much of West Africa. The move was bold, risky, maybe even reckless. But the people, they cheered. Tens of thousands flooded the streets, chanting, waving flags, lighting candles in honor of their ancestors, those who fought and died for a free Africa that had never quite arrived. Until now. Of course, the backlash came swiftly. Markets dipped. Western media ran headlines, "Traoré leads Burkina Faso into economic uncertainty, a young dictator's dangerous game." And yes, aid slowed. Imports got more expensive. There were short-term shortages. The people felt it. But something else began to rise in their place. Pride, ownership, unity. And then something unexpected happened. Ghana, Mali, and Niger followed Traoré's lead. Talks began to create an independent currency. Border alliances deepened. And for the first time in decades, a Pan-African movement was rising, not from Paris, not from Brussels, not from New York, but from Ouagadougou. Captain Ibrahim Traoré didn't become a hero by seeking power. He became one by surviving 5 coup attempts, by standing against foreign pressure, by refusing deals that silenced his people's future. He was no saint, no perfect man, but he was something Africa hadn't seen in a long time. Unbought, unbroken, unafraid. And that, fam, is the story the world tried to bury. If you followed us through this journey, thank you. You now know what most people don't. And now it's your turn. Share this story, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment. Do you believe Traoré made the right call? Would you have stood up like he did, or taken the deal? Let's keep the conversation alive. Because if there's one thing this story proves, Africa is not asleep. Africa is awakening.